And for more analysis, we're joined from Moscow by Sergey Marikov, former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and from Paris by Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO Policy. A very warm welcome to both our guests on Think Tank. Mr. Markov, we start off with you and we ask you, how would you characterize the outcome of the Witkoff-Putin meeting in St. Petersburg, sir?
The meeting of the Witkoff to the Moscow and his almost 5 hours meeting was with Vladimir Putin was very productive from point of view that negotiation happened, and it was really very serious negotiation, and a lot of issues should be was discussed. As spokesman for Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Peskov, told that now both sides, Russia and United States, didn't reach compromise yet, but all issues are discussed during this meeting. And Witkoff also added that what Russia and United States discussed, it's not just ceasefire, but general peace deal. It means a full stopping of this war and conditions of this. Russian conditions more or less clear. Russian critics told about territories. Territories also make sense, but more important, it's not territories. More important than all full of the repressive laws which can be implemented in Ukraine should be lifted. It means that Russian language should not prohibited in Ukraine, but should get official status of the second governmental language of in Ukraine. I should add that Russian language is native for something about 70%. 70% of the Ukrainian politicians, because in fact Ukraine is Russian city during 1,000 years. And another is denazification, meaning the stopping of system of terror, which had been created in Ukraine in 2014. And also neutrality of Ukraine as a meaning guarantee that no foreign troops, which is enemies to Russia, would be employed on the Ukrainian territory. It's a main Russian demand, and all of them discussed. We can say that United States already agreed, but United States on the way to agreement with these very reasonable Russian demands.
Sir, is this what you meant when you said that they did not reach a compromise, Mr. Markov, although the talks were constructive? Mr. Townsend, Mr. Markov, you're going to answer?
Yeah, I can continue. Yes, those negotiations were productive from point of view that all of that have been discussed. But what compromise will be reached or not reached, we don't know yet.
Okay, so got your point. I'll be back again, Mr. Townsend. What is the significance of sending a personal envoy like Steve Witkoff instead of relying on traditional diplomacy, sir?
Well, that's a very good question. Steve Witkoff is not a diplomat. He is a close friend of Mr. Trump, and he is a developer, a real estate developer from Manhattan. So he's also negotiating the Gaza ceasefire. He's also negotiating an agreement with Iran. So he seems to be the person that Trump turns to represent him in various negotiations about many things that he doesn't know a lot about, including nuclear issues with Iran. So I think what I just heard from my Russian colleague is a restatement of the conditions that we've heard before from Moscow. So I don't hear anything necessarily new there. I don't know what Steve Witkoff said. I don't know if he was just listening to this and he's taking this back to Washington to tell Mr. Trump. I don't know what Ukraine might think about these demands. And of course, Europe has a vote in some of this because it's European sanctions that are also on Russia. It's not just the United States. So I think I'm glad that they had talks. I'm glad that they feel that the talks were productive. It sounds like Russia put all of its demands on the table in an official way. I don't know what the Americans think about this, what the next steps forward would be, but we'll just have to see. But in terms of
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, Mr. Townsend. Do you predict what the United States may react towards, or you do not have any idea as well?
Well, with Donald Trump, it's hard to predict anything. I think Mr. Trump wants an agreement very quickly. I think he would be more willing than others to forego a lot of discussion and instead just agree to things. But I'm not sure what Ukraine will say, and I'm not sure what the Europeans will say.
But sir, I think that it's not imminent and it's not going to be quickly. This is what I think. What's your narrative on this? Do you think it's going to be quick and imminent?
I do not think it's going to be quick. I think it's going to take a long time. I think Ukraine has a very important role to play in this too, and we haven't heard from them. So we've got a long road ahead.
You've got a long road ahead. Mr. Markov, the criminal described the talks as useful and effective. What does that mean in practical terms, sir?
In practical terms, meaning that the United States wants to discuss all questions which Russian side ask. And we could see that European leaders just deny any Russian questions. They're just saying, no, Russia has no right of votes.
Right of what? Sorry, sir, I did not get this.
Yeah, European leaders say that we don't want to listen what Russians are talking because they are only guilty about everything. And you can see that the formula which used by European leaders, that Russian invasion to Ukraine has no any pretext, no any reasons. But it's not true. Russia want to say that prohibition of Russian language is the reason. Formation of a neo-Nazi regime is the reason. Look, it's very simple. Who is the main fascist in Ukrainian history? It's Stepan Bandera. Who is the main hero of current Ukrainian regime? It's Stepan Bandera. It's clear proof that current Ukrainian regime is neo-Nazi regime. It's what Russia told. And Europeans don't want to discuss even these issues, and United States are ready to discuss. It's minimum conditions for the negotiation. It's not enough for the success of negotiation, but it's for sure minimum conditions.
Okay, Mr. Markov, you said that the Europeans do not want to discuss. Mr. Townsend, do you have any comment on what Mr. Markov said now about the discussions of the Europeans?
Well, I think what's important is that we ask the Europeans. I haven't heard the Europeans give an opinion one way or another about those Russian demands. If we go just with what your Russian colleague had to say, we know that the demands were put on the table for Steve Witkoff. This is the first time I've heard what those demands are, and I thank my Russian colleague for telling us what those demands are. But I don't think the Europeans have said anything about these demands because we haven't heard about them. The Steve Witkoff has not said what the demands were, and neither has the president. So really, we don't have anyone's view yet on those demands, except that the Americans seem willing to talk about them. So I think,
Mr. Townsend, I'm very sorry to interrupt you in this context, but don't you think that President Zelensky should be part of this meeting, the Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin to reach an end to this war that's, of course, entering its third year, or it's past the third year?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's got to come a time for Mr. Zelensky to be part of this too. I don't know when that is, but we can't negotiate over his head, and we can't really negotiate over the Europeans' head either. And I think we can't negotiate while there are missiles that are still being fired into Russia, killing people with cluster munitions. That's no way to begin a negotiation.
Mr. Markov, has Russia's perception of U.S. stance in the war with Ukraine shifted after these meetings, sir? And if you want to answer, Mr. Townsend, of course, it's fully your right to answer.
First of all, Europeans know about those conditions. They just deny any rights of Russia for existence, in fact. And they deny the right of the Russian people in Ukraine to speak their native language. And Europeans deny right of Orthodox Christians in Ukraine to have a real Christian Orthodox church, where they have 1,000 years, which now, and this is prohibited by Zelensky regime. Another very important point: why not Europeans and Zelensky not taking part in those negotiations? Because they are against the peace. It's absolutely clear for everybody that European leaders and Zelensky want only war and no peace. They put so tough conditions that absolutely not acceptable. In fact, they ignoring any real reason or why Russia sent its troops to the Ukrainian territory to save dignity and of the millions of Russian people on Ukraine. And I also add that Russians believe that, of course, American leaders can change their position of such crisis. I personally think that this negotiation now will not successful.
You said it will not be successful, sir?
Yeah, I think they will be now not successful. Because,
why, sir? Why do you think they will not be successful?
Because the gap between the difference between Russian and American positions is still too far. I think those negotiations will be frozen. Then the war will start again, and Russia and United States will come to those negotiations back in the end of this year. And in the end of this year, the peace deal will be made more close to the Russian conditions, not now.
Mr. Townsend, how committed is the Trump administration to ending the war diplomatically based on current envoy efforts, sir?
Well, I think the administration is very serious about that. Steve Witkoff is the one that's doing the negotiating. He is Trump's #1 negotiator. He spent 4 hours with Putin, it sounds like, a few days ago. I expect that the two presidents will probably talk at some point. So I think he's very serious. I think he's probably very frustrated as well, because he has wanted a ceasefire, at least a partial ceasefire, and that has not proven possible.
But to my knowledge, sir, it's getting worse. The war is getting worse.
Well, it sure seems that way. Over Palm Sunday, a lot of Ukraine civilians, men, women, and children, were killed on a holiday, religious holiday, by cluster munitions from Russian ballistic missiles. So that doesn't sound like Russia wants peace. So I think what's important is to have at least a partial ceasefire or a full ceasefire while the negotiations are going on.
Mr.
Markov, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's exactly one of the reasons why Europeans don't take part in those discussions. European leaders very, very well that cluster ammunition have been not used on Sumy region during on this weekend. They know very well, but they directly lying about this cluster rocket missiles which have been used in Sumy. So if European leaders directly lying, so what reason to take them to the table of peace negotiation. No reason.
Okay, Mr. Townsend, how might recent international reactions to the Sumy missile strike affect U.S.-Russia diplomatic momentum, especially after Trump criticizing the attack, sir?
Well, I think the attack was a tragic event, and I think whether it's a Europe. Excuse me?
It was a tragic event.
Yes, very much so. And I think what we've got to do, the European leaders have expressed their outrage about this. Even President Trump has said it was unfortunate. But I think what we have to do now is say, let's have a ceasefire so we don't have these kinds of tragedies happen. Whether it's cluster munitions, whether it's not cluster munitions, whether it's in Sumy, wherever it might be. I think we need to have that ceasefire, and we need Russia to not continue to put conditions on the ceasefire. Let's have an unconditional ceasefire, and then let's have negotiations, and let's hear from Russia on what their conditions are. Let's hear from Russia what their concerns are. But right now, we haven't had a chance to do that. Because we haven't been able to have a ceasefire, and we haven't been able to have negotiations that all of us can understand what's happening.
Mr. Markov, how does Moscow interpret Donald Trump's statements urging Russia to get moving on a ceasefire?
Russia support the idea of the ceasefire, and Russia believes that we should make the peace deal as soon as possible, but sometimes we should have a few steps. First of all, sectoral ceasefire on the Black Sea, but we know that Europeans are undermining and not allowing a sectoral Black Sea ceasefire to happen because they don't want to take Russian back to the ship. Also, a sector about embargo on the energy infrastructure striking. It's also violated by Ukrainian side and it's supported by European leaders. As about ceasefire, it's quite reasonable, which my colleague from Paris is talking, that ceasefire is an important step. But Russia already have two experiences of ceasefire, Minsk I agreement and Minsk II agreement. And what we see, Ukrainian side sharply violated both of these ceasefire, use this time just for the full armament and creation of strong Ukrainian army and for starting the war again. And former leaders of Germany and France directly told about this their play during the negotiation. And current European leaders just lying again that it didn't happen and they want to ceasefire without conditions. That's why Russia wants to say realistic ceasefire, but not to repeat Minsk I and Minsk II agreement, which have been just used for the more strong war.
Mr. Markov, are you optimistic about a ceasefire as soon as possible, or you're not?
Yeah.
You're optimistic. Mr. Townsend, do you think a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine deal is realistically achievable in 2025 under current leadership with American mediation?
Yes, I do. I think the U.S. wants it very much. I think Ukraine does. And I think if Russia can stop putting condition after condition on a ceasefire and have at least a temporary ceasefire, I think that will show goodwill on all sides, and I think that should be pursued.
Your final words, sir, because I have to conclude this episode now.
My final word is let's go for a partial ceasefire. Let's stop the conditions on a partial ceasefire. Let's have it unconditional. And then if Russia wants to lay out all of its views, including its conditions, and make it part of the negotiation, let's do that. But let's start with a partial ceasefire,
okay.
A 90-day ceasefire. Let's start with that and begin to discuss those conditions that the Russians are laying on the table. Let's bring Zelensky into this and eventually the Europeans.
Mr. Markov, your opinion, sir?
It's very clear. When Europeans say that there should be a ceasefire and peace deal without conditions, they don't want peace. It shows that they just want to continue this war. For us, it's absolutely clear.
Who wants to continue this war, sir? You mean Ukraine wants to continue this war?
Ukrainian people want this peace as soon as possible. Ukrainian dictator Vladimir Zelensky wants to continue this war because that's the only way for him to preserve his power. If he loses his power, he would be asked by Ukrainians why he, Zelensky, killed half of the millions of Ukrainians.
Very thankful for your informative and your intellectual knowledge, and of course the focus remains on quiet high-level negotiations. That was Sergey Marikov, former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO policy. Thank you very much for your insights and informative, valuable knowledge.